Aries, the first sign of the Zodiac, represented by the ram, an animal famous for solving most of its problems by running directly at them. It's the sign that runs from March 21st to April 20th, that hopeful stretch of the year when the Easter Bunny starts hiding confectionery in your garden. But Aries is much more than overindulging on chocolate eggs. It's the sign of courage, enthusiasm, and volunteering for things you probably should have thought about for at least another 30 seconds. It's the sign of bold action, heroic confidence, and the firm belief that brakes are largely optional. So grab your helmet, your energy drink, and your fire extinguisher, because the cosmos is about to get dangerously hot. Welcome to the beginning of the Zodiac. Yes, Aries is the point where we come full circle, which means the cosmic year begins with a ram bursting through the gate and scaring the bejesus out of everyone. Aries is cardinal fire ruled by Mars. In other words, it's the spark that lights the flame, the starter pistol of the Zodiac, and the general feeling that something ought to be happening right now. Aries has a reputation for being bold, fearless, and occasionally a little too fond of charging headfirst into situations that might benefit from a moment's reflection. It's energetic, competitive, and rarely short on confidence, even when it probably should be. As usual, we'll explore its history, mythology, and psychology. We'll look at its tarot correspondences, a constellation that looks nothing like a ram's head, and a collection of herbs that Gordon Ramesses is likely to burn the house down with. But first, our fool is about to find out that running straight at the problem sometimes is the problem.
The Fool's Odyssey.
The Fool is still making his way through the Zodiac signs on the Cosmic Constellation Express.
Now approaching Aries. Please keep your arms, legs and common sense inside the carriage.
As the Fool disembarks, he finds himself in what looks like a military obstacle course.
Right, you, new recruit, what you standing there for? Move, move, move.
What? I've only just got off the train.
No excuses here, just action. This is the Cosmic Combat course.
I'm just trying to get my ticket stamped.
You can have your stamp if you beat me to the finish line.
Beat you?
A race. First one to the end wins.
Wait for me! Aries immediately charges forward like a battering ram.
First obstacle, the wall of initiative.
I was thinking about going around it.
That's your problem, too much thinking. You beat me on that one, but you won't be so lucky next time.
What's next then?
The hoops of fire.
Why are they on fire?
If it isn't dangerous, it isn't worth doing. Good, resistance builds character.
You know, I think you'd probably go faster if you look where you're going.
No time for looking, only charging.
What have we got next then?
Final obstacle, the mud pit of courage.
It doesn't look very inviting.
Courage is just doing something stupid very quickly.
You're stuck.
I'm temporarily delayed.
The Fool calmly walks around the edge of the mud pit and onto the finish line. Yay, I win.
Blast! I can't believe I'm number 2.
You certainly smell like a number 2.
Listen, fool, Aries is the first sign of the Zodiac. We don't wait around making plans, we just get on with it.
Yeah, I noticed.
Sometimes we get it wrong. Sometimes we run straight into a wall.
Twice.
But we'd rather charge ahead and learn the hard way than standing around doing nothing.
I suppose someone has to go first.
Exactly. Courage, initiative, enthusiasm. That's the Aries way.
Well, in that case, do you think you could stamp my ticket, please?
Of course. Now charge back to that train and blast into your next adventure.
I think I might walk, actually.
Suit yourself.
And so the Fool leaves the battlefield of Aries, slightly muddy, slightly singed, but with his ticket successfully stamped. To be continued. And now we return to the buttocks of destiny, where the reckless enthusiasm of Aries has blasted our arrow away from the sad cheek and back to the centre, pointing straight to the ram's cavern. Will the Fool charge over to the happy cheek, or will he plunge into the dark crevice? Find out next time on The Fool's Odyssey. The history of Aries. Before we get going, we need to zip back a couple of thousand years in our time machine to ancient Rome, where we find Marcus Manilius. He wrote an entire poem about the zodiac called Astronomica. Apparently it never occurred to him that he could simply explain Aries in a few paragraphs like a normal person. Instead we get 5 whole books of flowery prose to wade through. He said the sun returning in his yearly race to Cancer's sign meets Aries midst the space, seated between the point from whence he bends, his upward course and that in which he ends. There placed as umpire in the midst doth weigh, contracted night he well adjusts to day. Which is a very elaborate way of saying that Aries marks the point where the year finally starts to wake up again. As the sun enters the ram, the long winter nights start to shrink and the days begin stretching out. Here in the UK we're very much in favour of this, as it's done nothing but piss it down since January. Quantum leaping into the next century we find Claudius Ptolemy and his slightly more nerdy approach to the stars. He said the beginning of the whole zodiacal cycle, which in its nature as a circle can have no other beginning nor end capable of being determined, is therefore assumed to be the sign of Aries, which commences at the vernal equinox, since the moisture of spring forms a primary beginning in the zodiac. What he's getting at here is that a circle doesn't really have a natural starting point. You could begin anywhere, which is good news, because if you've been watching this series from the start, you'll know that we actually began with Virgo just to be awkward. However, Aries is traditionally considered to be the first sign. Driving our cosmic DeLorean into the Renaissance, we land in the garden of Heinrich Cornelius Agrippa, who catalogued the ruling angels of each sign. Wearing the halo for Aries is Machidiel, who is said to teach the way to avoid sins and flee evils. Of course, in the grand tradition of occult balance, if Aries has an angel, it also has a demon, and these were paired up by Eliphas Levi in the 1800s. Wearing the horns for Aries is Sarahiel, a demon queen who can be called upon to help with creating charms and casting spells. It makes a nice change from the usual grumpy medieval goblins. The mythology of Aries. Hurtling all the way back to ancient Mesopotamia, the Babylonians had their own constellation in this part of the sky. In the ancient star catalogue Mulapin, Aries wasn't actually a ram. It was known as Luhunga, which translates to the hired man or the agrarian worker. This makes a lot of sense when you remember that Aries marks the time when farmers are heading back into the fields to start the agricultural year. Over time though, the constellation became increasingly associated with Dumuzi, the shepherd god, and with shepherds you tend to get sheep. Eventually the agricultural worker quietly disappeared, and the group of stars we now know as Aries the ram was born. In ancient Egypt, Aries was associated with Amun-Ra, the ram-headed god of creativity and fertility. On the famous Dendera zodiac, the constellation is shown as a ram moving through the sky. By this point, the cosmic farmhand of Babylon had well and truly grown his horns. But the ram most people associate with Aries comes from Greek mythology. According to the story, a magical golden ram was sent by the god Hermes to rescue 2 royal children, Phrixus and Helle, from their rather unpleasant stepmother, who was lining them up for the sacrificial altar. The ram carried the children away through the sky, but unfortunately Helle lost her grip and fell into the sea below, which was afterwards named Hellespont in her honour. Phrixus, however, made it safely to the land of Colchis, where in gratitude for saving his life, he sacrificed the lamb to the gods, which strikes me as a slightly odd way of saying thank you, but there we are. In any case, the ram's magnificent golden fleece was hung in a sacred grove and guarded by a dragon, where it later became the prize sought by Jason and the Argonauts. Eventually, the ram made its way to 1963 and the Ray Harryhausen stop-motion movie. The skeleton army in that film is still one of the coolest things I've ever seen. The psychology of Aries. Time to step into our Carl Jung trousers as we take a look at the mind science of Aries. Now, this quote was taken from a seminar where he was questioned by a lady called Mrs. Crowley. Don't get excited though, apparently she's no relation, just another one of those Jungian meaningful coincidences. Anyway, at one point in the seminar, they got onto the symbology of the crucifixion, and Jung said, in the neighbourhood of the vernal equinox, the sacrifice of the lamb takes place. Now the lamb is really Aries, the little ram that was sacrificed at the spring point of the year between 100 and 150 BC, when Aries came to an end. When the sun changed from the month of the ram to the month of the fishes, the lamb was sacrificed. Now I just need to point out that he's not talking about the normal cycle of the zodiac here. As we all know, Aries comes after Pisces, not the other way around. When Jung says the sun changed from the month of the ram to the month of the fishes, he's referring to Platonic months. This is a vast cycle of about 2,000 years, where the sun works its way backwards through the signs due to axial precession. I've talked about this many times, so if you'd like an explanation, please see my last video on Pisces, because if I have to explain it one more time, I'm going to quit Kippy's quest and start making videos about knitting. He goes on to say the spring point is just when the ecliptic crosses the equator, so when the sun is in the summer solstice it must decrease, but when it is in the winter solstice, when Christ was born, it must increase. That shows how much of astronomy and astrology has gone into these legends. The cross then is the vernal sacrifice. What Jung is suggesting here is that the symbolism of the crucifixion may echo an older astronomical idea. The cross itself can be seen as a reflection of the celestial cross, the point where the sun's path through the sky intersects with the Earth's equator at the spring equinox. In that sense, the crucifixion becomes a symbolic expression of the same moment we've been talking about all along, the turning point of the year, when the Lamb of Aries is sacrificed and the cycle of renewal begins. He goes on to say, you could say the best things of the future were sacrificed in order to precipitate the gods of the future, to ensure a fertile continuation of the year. So he's saying that something valuable had to be offered up so the cycle of life could continue. Of course, Jung believed the same pattern appears within the individual psyche. At certain turning points in life, an old identity has to be relinquished before something new can emerge. Psychologically, Aries represents that moment of initiation, the courage to step forward into a new chapter, even if it means leaving something behind.
The personality of Aries.
Before we get into the personality traits, let's take a quick look at the basic astrological mechanics. First of all, Aries is a yang sign, sometimes described as masculine or positively polarized. In astrology, this simply means its energy tends to move outward into the world rather than inward. It also belongs to the cardinal modality, the group of signs associated with initiation and action. Cardinal signs like to get things going, which makes Aries the natural starter pistol of the zodiac. Its element is fire, linking it with enthusiasm, vitality and raw life force. If we compare that to the other fire signs, the difference becomes a bit clearer. Aries is cardinal fire, so that's the spark that lights the flame. Leo is fixed fire, the searing hot coal that keeps the flame going. And Sagittarius is mutable fire, the wandering flame that spreads fire into new territories. And finally, Aries is ruled by Mars, the Roman god of war, which gives the sign its reputation for courage, competitiveness, and the occasional head-first charge into battle mentality. The good news is that Aries people are full of energy, courage and initiative. When something needs doing, you're usually the first to leap into action. As the first sign of the zodiac, Aries has a natural pioneering spirit. You like to blaze trails, break new ground and charge enthusiastically into the unknown. Confidence is rarely a problem either. Aries tends to approach life head on, which can make you a natural leader, while everyone else is still figuring out which underpants to wear. There's also an infectious enthusiasm about Aries. Ruled by Mars and powered by fire, you bring a lot of raw energy into whatever you're doing. And of course you love a challenge. Aries is competitive, determined and rarely afraid of a fight, which all sounds absolutely marvellous. Right up until we get to the bad news. All that fiery enthusiasm can sometimes spill over into recklessness. Aries tends to act first and think later, sometimes much later. Patience is not your strongest virtue. If something takes longer than 5 minutes, you may already be halfway through the next argument. That famous confidence can also slide into stubbornness. Once Aries has decided that they're right, it can be extremely difficult to persuade them otherwise. Being ruled by Mars doesn't exactly help either. Mars is the planet of war, which means Aries can have a slight tendency to treat everyday disagreements like a full-scale military campaign. However, all of this is just two sides of the same coin. Moving into health and that dubious ancient medical chart known as the Zodiac Man. Now we've just done Pisces at the feet, so that brings us charging straight back up to the head, the wedge, the noggin. Marcus Manilius really went into detail here. He said the ram defends the head. Plenty to go on there, but perhaps it does explain why Aries has a tendency to charge head first into things. It's also a warning not to let things go to your head. Finally, it could be a reminder to wear a helmet. I'll be honest, I'm clutching at straws here. Now for wealth and career. We know that Aries is ruled by Mars and that gives the ram plenty of drive and initiative. As a result, entrepreneurial roles fit well with this sign, so it could well be that one day an Aries will buy Kippy's quest and we'll all end up working for them. Just be aware that the Fool has at least 12 turnip breaks per day and Monty has Wednesdays off to get his top hat cleaned.
Cleanliness is next to godliness.
Now let's take a look at love and relationships, and when it comes to romance, Aries tends to approach matters of the heart in much the same way they approach everything else in life. Quickly, enthusiastically, and occasionally without reading the instructions first. On the positive side, Aries lovers are passionate, exciting, and rarely boring. If they're interested in you, you'll probably know about it within the first 10 minutes. They also enjoy the thrill of the chase. Aries likes a challenge, which means they can be wonderfully romantic, right up until the moment the challenge disappears. The downside is that patience is not always their strongest virtue. Aries prefers relationships that move at the speed of Mars, which may feel slightly alarming to signs that prefer a more leisurely approach. But if you're looking for excitement, enthusiasm, and the occasional dramatic gesture, Aries certainly knows how to keep things interesting. But enough theory about romance, it's time to put Aries to the test in our very own cosmic dating game show. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to Star-Crossed. This week's fearless bachelor is Aries, bold, competitive, and convinced he can fix any problem with enthusiasm and poor impulse control. Will he charge headfirst into love, or straight through it and into the fence? Let's meet our 3 hopefuls. First up, we've got Leo, confident, fiery, and already rehearsing her victory speech. Next, there's Libra, charming, diplomatic, and quietly wondering why Aries is shouting. And finally, we've got Capricorn, practical, strategic, and already calculating how long this relationship will realistically last. Aries, it's time to ask your big question.
Alright ladies, here's the question. If someone insulted me in public, what would you do?
I'd stand beside you, of course. Then I'd make it very clear that anyone insulting my partner is insulting me. And trust me, darling, they won't make that mistake twice.
Well, ideally, I'd calm the situation down before anyone embarrasses themselves. A clever remark, a little charm, maybe a witty comeback. No need for a scene.
I'd quietly ask what they said, assess whether it matters, and then suggest we leave. There are more productive ways to spend the evening than arguing with strangers.
Well, Aries, it's make your mind up time.
I'm going with Leo. If there's going to be drama, we might as well enjoy it.
And there we have it. Fire meets fire as Aries and Leo set the stage ablaze. Will this passionate pairing conquer the world together, or simply burn the house down? Either way, it'll be loud. And speaking of questionable romantic decisions, it's time for Star-Crossed Tinder edition.
I enjoy good food, good wine, and not rushing anything.
By the time you finish dinner, I'll have climbed a mountain.
I get bored easily. Surprise me.
Good. Sounds like a challenge.
I'm nurturing, affectionate, and love building a cozy home.
Very nice, but I might accidentally set the curtains on fire.
Looking for someone organised, responsible, and capable of long-term planning.
I once entered a marathon by accident.
Intense. Loyal. I see straight through people.
Perfect. Saves time.
Passport ready, no plans. Let's just go.
Now we're talking.
Independent thinker. I question everything.
Great, you can question it while we're doing it.
Dreamer, romantic, emotionally intuitive.
I'm emotionally impatient.
Competitive, fearless, and always first.
2 Aries, that's not a relationship, that's a sporting event.
Time now to turn our attention to the stars themselves. The constellation of Aries is one of the original 48 listed by the ancient astronomer Ptolemy. Unfortunately, if you were expecting a majestic golden ram blazing across the heavens, you may be slightly disappointed. Aries is actually a rather faint constellation, made up of a modest little chain of stars that apparently forms the outline of a ram's head. In fact, if you live anywhere with a decent amount of light pollution, spotting Aries can be a bit like trying to find a sheep in the fog. The brightest star in the constellation is Hamal, a name derived from the Arabic phrase meaning the head of the ram. But despite its modest appearance, Aries holds a very important place in the sky. This is where the region marks what astronomers call the first point of Aries, the position where the sun crosses the celestial equator at the vernal equinox. That point has since drifted into Pisces, but Aries got there first. That's why this is the traditional starting point of the zodiac wheel. Aries usually gets to the front of the queue. We've got some deep sky objects here too, including NGC 772 or the Fiddlehead Galaxy, which is a really cool name. This is a large unbarred spiral galaxy about 106 light years away. Also, if you look in the direction of Aries during December, you might see fireballs blazing across the sky. Don't worry, we're not being attacked by Mars. This is the Delta Arietids meteor shower that shows up every year. Typical Aries, filling the sky with fireworks. For anyone following the sidereal zodiac, if your birthday falls between April 14th and April 20th, you're an Aries in both systems. If you were born between March 21st and April 13th, you'd be considered a Pisces in the sidereal system.
Correspondence Corner!
We're going to start by charging headfirst into the tarot cards, and in the case of Aries, that gives us the 2, 3 and 4 of Wands, the Queen of Wands and the Knight of Pentacles, the Page and the Ace of Pentacles, and the Emperor is Aries' major arcana card. First up, the 2 of Wands runs from March 21st to March 30th and is Mars in Aries. This card is also called Dominion and is all about getting started with a new challenge, but it can also bring a feeling of being trapped by our own success. Next, the 3 of Wands runs from March 30th to April 10th and is the Sun in Aries. This card is called Virtue and represents confidence, leadership and looking to the horizon for new opportunities. The 4 of Wands runs from April the 11th to April the 20th and is Venus in Aries. This card is also called Completion and represents celebration, stability and the joy of seeing a project finally come together. The Queen of Wands runs from March 11th to April 10th, covering the final decan of Pisces and the first 2 decans of Aries. She represents confidence, charisma and the ability to inspire others through bold leadership. The Knight of Pentacles runs from April the 11th to May the 10th, covering the final decan of Aries and the first 2 decans of Taurus. He represents persistence, determination and the steady effort needed to turn bold ideas into something real. The Ace and the Page of Pentacles rule the quadrant of the zodiac that contains Aries, Taurus and Gemini. These cards represent the practical foundations that allow new ideas to grow into something solid and enduring. Finally, we come to the trump card for Aries, the Emperor. In the tarot, this card represents authority, structure and the power to bring order to chaos. It reflects the pioneering spirit of Aries, the courage to take charge, make decisions and lead from the front. At its best, the Emperor builds strong foundations and protects what he's created. Although like any ram, he does sometimes have a tendency to rule by simply charging at the problem head first. Moving on to the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, Aries corresponds to the 15th path, which connects Hokmah to Tiferet. Symbolically, it represents the force of creative power flowing from Hokmah, the sphere of wisdom, down into Tiferet, the sphere of beauty and harmony. The 15th path also corresponds to the Hebrew letter He, which means window. In the Chicken Kabbalah, Lon Milo Deket says, a window is a transparent door, an eye from which we look out on the world. Moving on to the gemstones, some of which I just happen to be wearing on my wrist. These are from Otter Spirit, who've made a full collection specifically from Aries. Here's a few highlights. Don't forget you can use the code KIPPY20 for a 20% discount or KIPPY30 for a 30% discount on orders over $100. First up, we've got pyrite for prosperity, often called fool's gold. This stone is associated with ambition, confidence and attracting success. It supports Aries' natural drive to take initiative and turn bold ideas into real opportunities. Next is amethyst for intuition. This brings a touch of clarity and reflection, helping Aries pause long enough to listen to their inner guidance before charging headfirst into the next adventure. Then we've got lava rock for strength. Formed from cooled volcanic lava, this stone carries the energy of fire and transformation. It's all about resilience, grounding and the ability to keep moving forward no matter what obstacles appear. And we've got golden tiger eye for confidence. This stone supports courage, determination and clear decision making. It helps Aries stay focused and channel their powerful energy in a way that leads to success rather than unnecessary headbutting. Now for the herbs, and for this week's concoctions we're bringing back Gordon Ramesses, as he's got the right kind of temperament for Aries.
Right, Aries in the kitchen, first sign of the zodiac, ruled by Mars, planet of fire, action and shouting at people who are chopping onions too slowly. Perfect, my kind of crowd. Starter, we got basil, bright, punchy, full of life. Chop it up with fennel seed, drizzle it over roasted tomatoes, bit of olive oil. Simple, bold, straight to the point. Exactly how Aries likes things done. Now the main course, whole grains, strong fuel for people who charge head first into things without checking the map first. Toss them in a pan with some garlic and butter. Then we add saffron, expensive, fiery and slightly irresponsible, just like the ram. And finally dessert, raspberry leaf. Now normally this one's all gentle and medicinal, but we're Aries, so we're turning it into a syrup, reduce it down, splash it over a flaming fruit tart, and serve it while the pan's still smoking. There you go, 3 courses for the ram, fiery, bold, and cooked so fast the smoke alarm hasn't even realised what's happened yet.
Is it supposed to be on fire?
Of course it is, it's Aries.
Kirby's Quest. Kirby's Quest.
Anyway, that's Aries, the sign that kicks open the astrological year like it's late for its own party. When Aries shows up, things start happening. If there's a hill to climb, a challenge to tackle, or a dangerous idea that absolutely requires immediate commitment, Aries will usually be the first in line. Sometimes that means blazing a trail into exciting new territory. Sometimes it means discovering quite suddenly that the trail leads directly into a hedge. Either way, life rarely stays boring for long when the ram is around. Naturally, that bold Aries confidence also means that they tend to trust their own instincts. Once the ram has made up its mind, it's usually committed. As actress Maya Lar once put it, I'm an Aries. You ain't gonna tell me nothing. Thank you for joining us on this headlong charge through Aries. May your courage be strong, your enthusiasm contagious, and your helmet securely fastened. Until next time.